and welcome to another episode of the 1911. As you'll notice, my voice isn't Andy's. Unfortunately, Andy can't handle working from home, so he's a little bit tired tonight, lads. A little bit pathetic, isn't it? Especially when I've been working 13 hours today. We've done this anyway. Listen, we wanted to make sure that we got an episode out. Ewan, how are we doing, bruv?
Yeah, not too bad. How about yourself?
Bruv? What a clean bruv. Anyway, Will, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. I think I've just about calmed down after Reading, just about ready to go again.
Do you know, I promised myself I wasn't going to go again. I said after the Wimbledon game, I said I wasn't going to go to Reading. Decided last minute Friday evening, go on, I'm going to do it. We obviously met up for a drink beforehand, but let's get into it. A 2-1 defeat for City. Boys, I'll ask you first, Ewan, actually. What did you think?
I mean, to be honest, I thought it was a pretty poor game overall. I think they gave us a lot of space on what was a flawless big pitch. City tend to be really good when we want to play on the ground with these big pitches. We almost play to the occasion sometimes in these grounds that we play at. But I thought we were quite pedestrian at times in the game overall, which didn't help obviously what happened in the end. The first half especially, obviously there'll be a big debate about Wheatley because he wasn't fantastic and he didn't seem to come into the game really. But I mean, just everyone's going to be focused on those last like 5-10 minutes as just absolutely gut-wrenching, but you can't really say that we didn't play fantastically. I thought for the some parts of the game and maybe had it coming, but Reading in some ways created very little, and to gift them that win is just it's criminal.
They created absolutely nothing. Will, we'll come on to you, and obviously you were at the game with me as well. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that there's no way in any reality, alternate or otherwise, that we should not have got 3 points from that game. I think I'm not as critical of the performance as Ewan is. I think we played quite well. I think we controlled the game. I think we did what we had to do until the 90th minute. I think the only criticism we can really have is that when we got into the final third, we just didn't have that extra yard, extra sort of bit of like finishing, extra bit. We just didn't have that extra bit to sort of put the game beyond doubt. Which, I mean, another goal and that game's dead. It's absolutely finished. I think if I'm a Reading fan, I'm looking at that and thinking that's the luckiest 3 points we're going to get in a generation. Which is why it's so frustrating. It's what it's like. We're leaving. Like we can't. On a run like we're on away from home, we can't be leaving 3 points out like that, really.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. And I think that, obviously there was quite a bit of a debate as well on the Twitter about kind of Wheatley's role and how he played, which you've already mentioned as well, Ewan. For me, I didn't feel he got into the game enough. I felt that at times it looked like he was almost trying to trick the goalkeeper when the ball was going back to him, because obviously they were playing quite shallow. They were playing from the back, and I just felt at times that looked really dangerous. But what we thinking so far about Ethan?
I mean, I think I mentioned it in the last episode. It just frustrates the hell out of me that when he gets those high balls, he chooses to back in every time. He never jumps. I know, obviously, players who come down to the Premier League, the biggest criticism is that they're not ready for the physical side of the EFL, and they struggle because obviously they want the ball in an ideal world into feet where they're not going to be pressured as much, maybe in terms of the physical aspect of a league like League One, but he didn't get into the game, and I think it speaks volumes as well that Humphreys, when he came on, looked really lively. And again, with the quality of the pitch, and I think the way Reading were playing so shallow, I think it would have really suited Humphreys. But I don't think there was an excuse really for Wheatley not to have a go today from the start. Similarly to the way we saw against Rotherham when he came off the bench. There's no excuse not to have a run out and just try your best. And I just feel like sometimes his effort is lacking.
I'd be surprised now, not to sort of jump ahead too much, but I'd be surprised now if Humphreys doesn't start the next game. That's 3 away games. 3 away games now. He's come on. He scored 2 goals. looked bright against Reading. Nearly got an equaliser right at the end,
Yeah.
if not for a block on the line by their centre half. And yeah, I think he's sort of staked his claim. Although I'm sort of, if I'm Paul Mullin, I'm sat on the bench thinking, what have I got to do to
Yeah,
get started?
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, one of Mullin or Humphreys, I think, will start the next game, but Mullin's got to get a run at some point, surely. Otherwise, what was the point bringing him in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for kind of, if you've got the wage and you don't mind it, then bringing in a head like him simply for the experience, even if he's just going to sit on the sub bench and shout at players who are on the pitch and tell them what to do. That's experience that they'll learn. But he's got to have some value to this team, surely, out on the pitch. He's not just there as a glorified, statue to tell people what to do. He's got to have something to offer, and I think he does. I think he really does. I think the trouble will be finding a way to deploy him, particularly with his pedigree or lack of pedigree at League One level. Obviously, he was prolific in League Two, but did struggle in League One with Wrexham. And again, we talked about this last episode, and the one before, but about Mullin's return at Wigan, which wasn't terrible in a pretty bad team, but he must have something to offer, surely. I don't know how would you use him though in terms of if you're in that Reading game, do you think he would have improved the front line, play him instead of Wheatley?
I think he would have run off the shoulder a bit. I mean, he's similar to my mind, and admittedly, I've not seen Paul Mullin play as many games as I have a lot of Bradford City players, just because he's not played for us for very long. But to my mind, he would run off the shoulder a bit more. The only thing he doesn't have that Wheatley does is a bit of height, but then he's aggressive, and he's experienced as well. He's got that know-how, so I think he'd play a similar role. He would just, he's not as much of a target, so you can't really knock a high ball up to him and expect him to get his head on it.
But I mean, he's not that much shorter than Andy Cook was. He's not. And again, I will pin my colours to the mast here and say that I'd much rather have a player like him who's got bags and bags of EFL experience now, and not football experience as well, of being a big physical player, someone who is a target man in the sense of he's quite the antagonist. I'd back him to win a header far more than someone who's maybe a little unexperienced and not as up to date with the physical side of the EFL like Wheatley. And I think we've seen that already with Wheatley. It's just now for Mullin to show us what he can do.
But do you not think that possibly that we always seem to kind of tend to talk about Mullin in the same kind of limelight as maybe a Cook? Very, very similar strikers. I mean, even when we brought him in, people were saying, "Oh, he's very similar to Andy Cook." Now, Andy Cook wasn't getting in a team for whatever reasons. Obviously, he wasn't seen as the man. Is the reason that Mullin's not getting in the team simply because he's far too like Andy Cook, and the fact that we have kind of embraced that kind of Wheatley role, that Humphreys role, those kind of players, Jackson, for instance, as well. They're very, very different players to Mullin. Is that potentially the reason why Mullin is no longer getting a view?
I don't think he is like Andy Cook, to be honest. I think that's a bit of a lazy comparison for that people have just brought in because they were both firing at the same time in League Two when Cook and Wrexham, us and Wrexham were both in League Two together. I think he's a much different player to Andy Cook. He's a lot more mobile. I mean, that's for one, and I think he's technically a better player as well. Like look at the goals he scored. A lot of those goals you wouldn't necessarily like have Andy Cook down as scoring at this stage of his career.
I'd actually I do agree with part of what you're saying. I think he's more similar to late evolution Andy Cook at Bradford City in the sense that he had obviously that season under Hughes where he exclusively scored in the penalty area, having been fed the ball. But as he got later and later into his time at Bradford, he scored more goals that he created himself, or he fashioned his own chances and was able to put those away as well. So I think I definitely understand. I think probably the difference is the way that City and Wrexham used their number nines. Mullin at Wrexham isn't the focal point wasn't the focal point of that team. He's someone who lurks on the, like you say, on the last man, and he's a bit more of a poacher, whereas Cook is entirely the focal point of that Bradford team. And he's the one who's getting the ball knocked up to him, whereas Mullin didn't play like that.
So I think so obviously we've talked about Mullin and we've talked about why he's not potentially getting a spot. I want to go back to the Reading game and I want to go back to the last, well, the last 10 minutes or so. Bradford City are 1-0 up. I would say personally in cruise control. Personally, I felt that we were very, very comfortable. And we make a substitution and we decide to bring up Bobby Poynton and we bring on Joe Wright. And within around 30 seconds, Reading score a goal. There's been a lot of comments on Twitter. There's been a lot of comments on social media, full stop, about that substitution. I want to kind of ask you guys about what your thoughts are on that. Will, I want to come to you first. What do you think that was the difference maker in the game? Or is that just us literally clutching at straws?
Absolutely not. I don't think that substitution had any bearing on the result whatsoever. I think when you look at both the goals that were scored, I think there's two individual errors. It's the first one is an individual error from Pennington where he tries to head the ball clear and it skims off his like a 50p head and just goes like straight to a Reading player. And then the second one is Ibutore doesn't stop the cross coming in and Matt Ritchie just climbs over our centre halves to head it in. I think, you know, if those two individual errors don't happen, then we win the game. I don't think, you know, Joe Wright being on the pitch has anything to do with the fact that those happen. I think, you know, he's not distracting those players. He's coming in to try and win headers and to try and make our back three a bit more physical. I think people are trying to look for an equivalence to something like the Mark Hughes substitution from Scott Banks for Matty Platt. And it just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist for me.
Yeah, I'd agree, especially on the comments like comparing it to that Banks for Platt substitution, because the situation of the game were completely different. We just scored against Carlisle at that point in the game, was it? Or was it? No, it must have been much later. I'm trying to think exactly when the substitution happened. But we were basically the comment was we were in the game, and then by going defensive, we killed any chance we had of momentum and trying to get another goal. But yeah, again, this difference was going defensive when we were already winning. You know, we were in a fantastic position. But I agree with you. It's a Pennington mistake for the first one, and then the second one, yeah, just Sars doesn't get out, Torre doesn't jump high enough. It's just sloppy, it's lazy, and it's just. I'm just as annoyed as you are, and there's a reason why we're recording this on a Wednesday night and not on a Sunday, because we would have all put our fists through our monitors, I think.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I'm going to throw something else into this, guys, because I was watching a lot of the formation of when Joe Wright came in. Personally, I disagree. I actually do think that it was a big error. I'll tell you why I think it was a big error. I think that defensively, we weren't sure what the positions of our defence were. If you look at where they scored their goal, they scored them from their right-hand side. There was two players out wide. It was the first time they'd ever got anywhere near that kind of possession, and the fact there was two of them. So the fact that they were able to put that ball in, and it just looked to me like the defense became really nervous when Joe Wright came in. I'm not saying this is about Joe Wright, and I have said this on the pod before. I'm not Joe Wright's biggest fan. I'm not blaming Joe Wright, but I think personally, I think that it caused a little bit of confusion in the defense, and that's where the chaos came from. Lads, tell me what you think on that one. I honestly believe that.
It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to comment on whether, you know, it's hard to comment on things like whether it caused confusion without being the players themselves. I mean, it's all sort of that. It's all just conjecture that at the end of the day, isn't it? Like, I mean, ultimately, the fact of the matter is, we were short on defenders when Joe Wright came on because Baldwin had gone off. We were short on defenders, and it's the 90th minute. We're 1-0 up away from home. We've lost 7 of our last 8 away games, and we're going for promotion. If that goal goes in anyway, then you're going to be giving penalties to somebody, to the manager, for not making a substitution like that. Yeah, so, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22, I think.
Also, I'd like to point out, sorry, before you go on, I'd like to point out that you're under the assumption that Joe Wright's been handed a big sheet of instructions saying, you know, dear Mr. Centre-Back, I want you to stand exactly here. And the defence has got the same thing, and that by giving them too many instructions, like they've been confused by another player coming on. Mate, the defending in the
I
85th
would,
minute, they're just getting their
yeah,
bodies in front of
this,
the ball.
I think I tell you what, I think that if you look at that defensively for up until that point, Reading didn't even have a shot on target. I think that once that substitution was made, the defense was made to change its shape, where players had been so used to playing for 89 minutes, they were in different positions, which caused chaos. Personally, that's where I think the problems arose, and the fact that they had two goals from two very sloppy defensive mistakes, in where I would say that probably the defensively we weren't entirely sure where we were defending from. Again, that's a proper absolute minefield, but that's how I saw it, and I do think for me, I think it was a mistake. I really do think that was a mistake, that substitution. I mean, at the time, I kind of was, I was a little bit unsure about it. But I mean, it's just the fact that as soon as that happened, we dealt with them for 89 minutes for whatever it was, didn't even have a single shot on target, and we were able to cope with it.
Well, let's
So
not
that's
forget.
for me where I just think that, it's too much of a coincidence, but it also was a shape of where the defenders were playing, because they were having to shift because of Joe Wright coming in, and I just think that caused chaos.
Let's not forget Matt Penning. The first goal and shot on target that we conceded came from an error from Matt Pennington.
Yeah,
That's got nothing to do with the positional sense, or it's got nothing to do with like shifting around. Matt Pennington was playing as a right centre back, and he tried to head it clear and completely like spooned the header the complete wrong direction, and it went to one of their players. Now, if in the previous shape, regardless of whatever substitution had been made, that player would have been unmarked anyway, because it would have been Matt Pennington covering that player. So that first shot on target, I'm not sure you can attribute to anything other than an individual error.
Also, whilst we're on that topic, the second goal isn't anything to do with Joe Wright either. It's Salsout who's meant to get close to him. I think is the guy who's crossing the ball, and then it's Torre who doesn't jump at the back post. The ball sailed over Joe Wright. He's got nothing to do with that.
yeah, I think that is a reasonable, but I'm not. I mean, the one thing is that I'm not actually saying is that it's Joe Wright who's caused the problems. I'm saying it's a shift in the defensive pattern that's caused the issues.
I think as well, it's worth pointing out that you can say that we invited pressure maybe by making that substitution, and it was maybe again putting your colours out and saying, look, we're going to go defensively, throw what you can at us, and that immediately backfired within like 30 seconds.
What I do think is pertinent to mention, though, is it's clearly not an ability thing, and it's clearly not anything other than this whole away run of form we're having right now. This was a perfect example of it being a mentality thing. Like, how many goals have we conceded where people have switched off or made stupid errors or things like that in away games that have cost us the game, and it's happened again, and it's bordering on unprofessional. Like, they've got to do something about it, and I don't know what that is, but like it is. Every single time something like this happens, you think, well, it can't get worse. It can't happen again. It can't happen again. And then you think, like, Bradford City, hold my beer, we do it again.
Well, you mentioned it at the start as well, with them, of all the time to lock it down and just tighten up. You're gonna go up against the cost. You're 1-0. You're only one goal up. Just see it across the line. Have that thought in your mind of how many games away from home have we thrown away due to poor performances or lack of concentration. Just lock it up.
That's the frustrating thing, though. I don't even think we were under the cosh. I don't think
I think they had the chance, which was just over the bar when Baldwin got kicked in the face. But that was all they had before they scored. I do admit. But again, just to even it only takes one chance. Why switch off? Why think, oh, that was close, we better switch on next time? Just don't let it happen. It's ridiculous. And I do feel really sorry for what was a really good away following as well. I think in the past that would have been a ground we would have just taken, maybe slightly less than 1,000 to. We're taking, what was it, 1,300, something like that, and a really good backing with the knowledge that we've not won away in so long, yeah, I feel for the fans.
Before we move on to anything else, though, I do think obviously there's been a lot of negativity surrounding that discussion. I do think it's important to bring up the fact I thought Max Power had one of his best games for us since signing. I thought we really saw from him what we'd missed in the last couple of games. Not that I think Lee Evans is a good backup, and he came in and did well against Stockport. But I think any detractors from Max Power, after seeing how he played on against Reading, I think they have been very quiet, and I think they're justifiably so.
Yeah, I mean, it's the familiarity argument, isn't it? He's your captain. You're going to miss him if he's not there.
I want to kind of move on then, chaps. We've talked about Reading, and to be honest with you, I'm sick and tired of thinking about it. So a long drive back. I kind of want to mention something else that's been mentioned quite a lot this week, and it's been about the January recruitment and how that has been shaping and how that's been looking so far. There doesn't really seem to be a standout player from January. Granted, we're literally in March. I just want to kind of get your kind of like views on so far on the players that we've brought in and whether they have made a big difference to this team or not.
There's definitely a standout player, and it's Jackson. He may be injured now. Obviously, he's going to be out for a month. The club are confirmed, but they're very, very hopeful that he will play a part in the rest of the season, which is really good news. But he's definitely a standout player. I definitely understand though your comments about the recruitment.
Yeah, I think not to repeat, what a lot of people have already said, sort of online and in other discussions, but I think our recruitment in January has been very much like replacing the depth. It's been getting rid of the depth in the team that either weren't happy to sit on the bench or weren't good enough to come in and deputise, essentially. And I mean, yeah, not to go over all ground, but we can see that all of those players have gone to League Two teams. So to my mind, that means they probably weren't good enough anyway. And we've brought in players who, yeah, I mean, they are the depth signings, aren't they? Then, other than Caden Jackson, there's been no one who's really sort of seized that chance yet. But yeah, I don't know. There's 13 games to go, 12 games to go even. A lot could happen in that time, and the team will shift around a few more times between now and the end of the season as well. So, even if maybe we get, like a Michael Mellon moment, like Salford away from Paul Mullin, something like that, then just because they haven't sort of nailed down the like a starting spot doesn't necessarily mean that they've been failures.
Yeah, I also think it helps or is detrimental to the people who have come in that the people they have come in to, be depth for have actually locked down their positions recently. So Nerfville obviously had a bit of a wobble coming into January and through January, and that's why we started to see Harrison Ashby, sorry. I keep thinking about Ashby Hammond. I confuse those. And on that sort of as well, on the left side as well, Tyreek Wright has become a staple at left wing back, so that's taken him out of that as well. And then up front, Bobby's looked better in recent games, and Jackson obviously has started really well, so that's taken Mullin slightly out of the equation. Obviously, there's Wheatley there as well, double the competition, and we have once again realised how desperate we need Sars in that team. So Joe White, I mean, we haven't even heard about him since Huddersfield away, have we?
It's a cliche, isn't it, that the best signing you can ever make is competition for the player that's already starting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because and you're absolutely spot on. They've made the starting 11 play better, and in of itself that means that they're successful signings, right?
Yeah, I tend to agree. But you want competition that you feel confident in, and how many of those January signings do you feel confident if they had to step into the starting lineup that you'd be happy with?
Yeah, well, I mean that's a different debate, isn't it? And
which is why I'm asking the question, I guess. To be honest with you, I mean we can kind of go around the houses and say, that, for instance, like you mentioned about kind of like they've made the team better or more competitive, but have they? In the sense that what competition is there if we're not really excited about any of these players coming into the first team, right?
Well, I would be excited for Harrison Ashby because he looked really good when we've seen him in dribs and drabs. You know, he had that great substitution against Cardiff, and he's looked very lively. I enjoyed watching him. But again, can't really say that for Mullin, who hasn't really hit the ground running. He's had some really difficult performances, I think, and at some instances you could even argue that with the away form, he hasn't had the rub of the green in terms of the team performances as well. You know, we talked about him being a poacher, but he needs those people around him, I think, to succeed. Yeah, I mean, it's a great point of, you know, how many of those would you actually be happy to have in the first team, or and how important is that competition?
How many of those have had a proper chance as well? I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, like double-edged sword kind of argument, isn't it? Because like they haven't had the chance because you wouldn't be confident with them, so you're not going to give them the chance because you're not confident. But then they've also, because they exist and they're there, the starting 11's playing better, but they're not going to get the chance because the starting 11's playing better. So you never get any confidence in them. And it's sort of like, you know, it's almost like Sisyphus, isn't it? Pushing the boulder down the hill.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think you're right. If we see that Mullin moment, I don't think there'll be any more questions about it. But obviously, because we've been able to bring in some of these caliber of players, you know, some of these players have come from the Championship. News this week that the new season ticket prices have come out and they've increased by £50. So that's in 3 years, I believe. That's an increase of £150 for a season ticket. Will, me and you have been a little bit vocal about this on Twitter, and I think it's probably a really good conversation to have. Ewan as well. I think we've all kind of had a little conversation about it. So I kind of want to see what your stance is about first of all, the increase, and also where you think that maybe that money's going to go. Will, I'm absolutely no. In fact, Ewan, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
Well, as a season ticket holder, I can say I don't particularly mind the increase. I think the club can take this opportunity to play catch up. We've been treated to very affordable football at Valley Parade over a long period of time, and if the club needs to play sudden catch up in order to meet other markets, then yeah, that's fine. I know obviously there are similar sized football clubs. Bolton, for example, their season ticket is it £80 cheaper or something like that?
I think it was 275 on the early bird.
Yeah, so that's what, 75 quid cheaper than what we're going to be seeing. But I think it's a really good thing. I think one of the best things about Bradford, and the reason why the feelings have come back into this football club and that vibe is back, is because they're taking these little decisions like replacing all the seats. We know the Midland Road stand is going to be next for that project. The little signage on the top of the cop, things like that. Just improving the club in little dribs and drabs. And the season tickets will go a long way as well. That little increase, you know, I absolutely despise math, but what's 150 times 15,000.
I think someone worked it out.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, that's immaterial anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off at you. And
no, not at all.
I think there's a few things here. I think number one, I think we get to the point where we're having a bit of an identity crisis with the club, because what do we want to be? Do we want to be one of these bigger teams that like spends loads of money, or do we want to be a team who care about making football affordable? And you know, Bradford is, as the club have told us, in previous season ticket campaigns, it's an area where poverty is, relative to the rest of the country, is very high. The earnings are very low, and I think it can be £350 for a season ticket, £349 for a season ticket, regardless of what division you're in, is reasonable. Let's not speak out of context or out of turn. I think it's that increasing the price by £150 over the course of 3 seasons, that's a lot of money. That is a massive proportion. It's nearly 100% increase. I think also when we talk about other clubs, I think that, the Bolton one is, fair enough. I understand they've got a lot more resources than we have. Maybe they can afford to make that, make things a bit more affordable without taking the hit as much. I think Doncaster are another club where I think the cheapest season ticket at Doncaster is £244, and they definitely don't have as much resources as a lot of other teams in our league. So I think that's something, and also their stadium is a lot smaller, and they get a lot fewer season tickets than we do. I think as well, it's when we say like what's 150 times 15,000, or see, I had a look earlier today. Last season, well, this season, we had just over 16,000 season ticket holders. Of those, 6,000 were adults, and another 2 or 3,000 were seniors. So other than that, oh sorry, I mean 8,000 were adults, and another 2,000, just over 2,000 were seniors. So basically, there's 10,000 there, and the rest are either young persons or kids or other concessions. So it's not like we're getting that entire extra £150 times 16,000.
Isn't the 25-year season ticket coming to an end this summer, by the way?
Yes, it is.
That's another 1,000 then. But essentially, doing a bit of, back of a fag packet maths, it's around we're getting an extra around £500,000 from this. And if people are saying that is going to help us compete and really be a bit more adventurous, I mean, in the Championship, that's just not the case.
For the record, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm saying that this will help the little things, I think, and keep the football club in the feel good factor that we are at the moment. I mean, obviously the fans won't be feeling good after having to pay that little more. But Chris did raise a really good point, and that was about the price per game.
Yeah, I just wanted to just finish off the previous point. I think in the Championship, that is not the case. It's a drop in the ocean, and that is not going to help us really compete. In League One, lest we forget that Stefan Rupp said at the start of the season that he has enough money on his own to take us to promotion. So why then are we going, and I'm not saying the club are doing this, but why then do we need to rely on our fans to chip in another £500,000? If the owner has already said that, then I think it's a little hard to countenance given the things that I've just said. But don't get me wrong. I think in the grand scheme of football at the moment, when you compare it to other places, it's still a reasonable price.
Well, Rupp says he has the money. He didn't say he would use it. He was probably just bragging, saying like, "Oh, I have all this money. You're not getting it though." No. Chris, go on about the points, the price per game, because I think it's a really good point.
I think it's something like £15 a game. I think it works out as something like that. I think it's a really interesting conversation though, because as I've mentioned before, is that I can see both sides of the story on this one, and I could see both sides of the debate and the conversation with this. I'm certainly in the pro one, in the case of that. I think that I don't mind that extra 50 quid, but that is in my personal, that's for me, that works for me. I can afford that. Yeah. I can do that. But I also feel that, we're talking about, for instance, we're talking about Rupp, and we should say, well, what about this extra 500 grand or whatever? Why should we rely on the owner alone? And I don't ever want to be that club that has to rely on the club alone, on the owner alone. But I think that these kind of things do need to happen. We talked about, for instance, that it was nearly 50% less 3 years ago. 3 years ago we were playing in League Two. We were playing some absolutely dreadful football. We were playing some terrible football. I think in some ways, if I'm honest, chaps, I think that we're victims of our own success. That I think that because we're fourth, and because obviously ticket sales, we're getting 21,000 every week now, where we were selling 16,000 tickets. So we're selling 5,000 tickets probably on match day. I think we're victims of our own success. And I think that for me, the extra 50 quid, I understand it and I totally get it. And I feel that we should, just because we had a model that was really, really good and was understanding of people's fortunes, or the fact that we wanted affordable football, not saying that it's not affordable either, but then again, I can't say that for other people. But I think that we also have to think that just because we've used that model before doesn't mean that we carry on using that model forever. And I think that if we want this club to move forwards, I think it has to happen.
Yeah,
And
I'm a really big believer in what you just said. As the idea that okay, we're a model football club in the sense that we have a financial model and that we don't splash money on big transfers that could backfire. But at some point, with the way football is at the moment, you have to take a step away from that model. And again, I'm not saying that suddenly increasing the price of season tickets is suddenly going to make that, but it's a worthy comment for the way the football club does need to move. Will's absolutely right though with the idea that the community is the centre of this football club.
Will needs to come in. He's shaking his
Yeah,
head.
he's shaking his head. He completely disagrees.
I just think if we want our football club to move forward, squeezing fans isn't the way to do it. And also, if we want our football club to move forward, like any football club that has moved forward, match day income is a drop in the ocean. Like that is not the way to move your football club and kick them on into promotion, competing higher up. That's like that's not how clubs move forward. Clubs don't move forward by squeezing more and more and more and more and more out their fans. Clubs move forward by getting extra investment from people who can afford way more than fans can. It's not. There's no reason for every single club in the country not to charge, affordable rates. The only ones where you can, the clubs that will sort of exist off, their match day income and big paydays when big clubs come to town. We're talking sort of the lower end of League Two. For clubs the size of Bradford City and up, the way you sort of get better and bring yourself into higher leagues, and like I keep saying move forward, but the way that happens isn't by doing this. And if you look at every other club who's done this since the dawn of time, it's not come through charging more money on tickets. It's come through other ways, and primarily and almost always by getting extra investment from benefactors elsewhere. It's like when you compare the amount of money it would take to make Bradford City competitive in the Championship, for example, our fans club all our fans together and they still can't afford that. Yeah. So it's not like there's no reason and as far as I'm concerned anyway, absolutely no reason for our tickets not to be affordable. And I'm not saying they're not affordable now. Just
yeah.
I think it's a great conversation.
I mean, we could go round and round on circles on this. Yeah, I mean, we're all sort of in the same camp that we want football to be affordable in any way it can be. And like I say, I for one completely understand the community that this club has and the area as well that it serves. I mean, the club has gone to great lengths recently to increase that community aspect, and everyone at the club is really grateful for that because it does improve, I think, the match days because we get a much wider variety of people coming and taking interest in the club.
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation, and I think it's one that I could totally see both sides of the conversation with that one. But we'll move on. Ewan, have you got the scores on the doors?
I absolutely have. So, from last Saturday, Bradford's next opponents, Leyton Orient, lost 3-1 to Barnsley. A David McGoldrick hat-trick at the ripe old age of 38, taking that one as a 3-1 score. Northampton 1, Peterborough 1. Doncaster got thumped 4-0 by Cardiff at home. Exeter also got thumped at home 5-1 by Bolton. Interesting to note that all the top three won, and that 4th, 5th, and indeed 6th all lost on Saturday. We'll come on to the table very soon. Lincoln 4, Blackpool 0, Mansfield 2, Wimbledon 2, Port Vale 1, Luton 1, Rotherham 1, Plymouth 0, halting Plymouth's climb there slightly.
Huge result.
Yeah, huge result that. Stevenage 2, Stockport 1, another massive result. Wigan 1, Huddersfield 0, another one we didn't really see coming. And Wycombe 3, mind the gap. We didn't win either, but mind the gap. Wycombe 3, Burton 0. Bradford obviously going to Wycombe on Easter Monday, Easter Sunday,
Yeah,
something like
I
that.
think you're right. It is.
It's coming up fairly soon on the horizon. But with that in mind, the gap grew basically towards the autos because the top three won. Bolton are the only team in the top five who are still who don't have a game in hand. Everyone else on 34, Bolton on 35, which means that Bolton sit on 61 and then Bradford on 58. Same as Stockport County have a one less goal difference, and then Wickham take up Huddersfield's place in the playoffs on 53.
Indeed, they do.
Also played 35. You'll be interested to know there that I did not include the top two because I now officially consider them gone.
You did. You mentioned them.
Yeah, but I didn't mention them at the table.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm still going to say this, by the way. I do think that Lincoln are going to win the league. I've been saying this for weeks.
They play each other on Saturday.
Yes,
and
they do. Yes, they do.
Going to be telling that, isn't it? I think the winner of that basically wins the league. And hopefully, touch wood, the other one completely loses every single game and falls off. And
absolutely. And Luton, Lincoln have sold out their away tickets as well.
That's incredible. That's incredible work, to be fair.
That's massive, to be honest with you. So that's
what I just want to bring up is, fine. Let's say, I mean, realistically, there's 12 games to go. Lincoln, Cardiff win every week. The 13-point gap. It's very unlikely that we're going to catch either of them. But of everyone in the league, we've got the second easiest running in terms of our remaining opponents' points per game. Our remaining opponents have an average points per game of 1.28. The only team in the league with a higher PPG, lower PPG of opponents is Wigan. So we are 6 points above Huddersfield, who are 7th, with a game in hand, and we're 8 points above Reading, who are 8th, with no game in hand. We probably have to win 5 or 6 games to nail a spot in the playoffs. We should easily be doing that. Yeah. We've got 6 home games left. Like that. I mean, and one of our away games, our game in hand over Huddersfield and Wickham is bottom of the league, Port Vale. I think if we don't get in the playoffs now, it's a bit of a bottle job. I know I've said this before, but I really, really do think that. I think there's no way we should be dropping out. We should be dropping out the top 6 from this stage.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a reason though if we do drop out, and it's similarly to last season, is the away form is absolutely horrendous, and if we do drop out, then we'll look back at loads of these away games and think, well, we didn't even turn up there, and we could have easily got a point. And that'll be frustrating, I think. Like you say, I'm starting to move as we progress and we start grinding out more and more results on. Obviously, as the gap to the end of the season starts to close, I will start to see more from your point of view as saying, oh, if we fall out now, it's completely our own fault and it's a real travesty and we'll be gutted. But it does look like it's going to happen. But we just have to win away at some point before the end of the season, I think, to guarantee that playoff spot.
I think the one against Port Vale next week is very winnable, and obviously they have to play Sunderland on the Sunday. They've just played extra time against Bristol City last night, so as we're recording this on Wednesday evening. I think that's going to be really, really difficult for them because they're going to be really up for that game on Sunday against Sunderland. I think that's going to work massively in our favour. I know it's given them an extra day, but obviously looking very quickly at next week's games, do we think that Port Vale game is very winnable or not?
I think it's going to be tough. I would say it's winnable, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be a really, really tough match on an awful pitch for a team that have improved significantly since January. The table wouldn't show it, but they have recruited quite well. They've got rid of Darren Moore for one thing, and I'd say they're a slightly better team. It's going to be a tough match, and I mean, the key factor is we are away from home.
I think the bottom of the league for a reason. I don't think we should be going into that game worried about it being tough. We're fourth.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mentality thing as well. Sorry to cut you off.
No, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think, we're fourth. They're bottom of the league. Like any other team, if we weren't in this position, any other team in this position, you would expect to rock up there and win about 3 or 4-0. I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but I think we should be going there expecting to win. I think we should be going into Saturday expecting to win because we seem to win every home game ever, almost. And I think we should be going to Wigan the following Saturday with 6 points and the table looking a lot healthier.
Just looking ahead to Saturday against Leyton Orient, then obviously we're going to come up against the third top goal scorer in League One, Dom Ballard. How do you stop a player like him?
Play at home, win every home game.
Don't sub on Joe Wright in the 85th minute.
I'd like to think that Baldwin manages to get his face mask sorted out in time for the game. I think that he probably has the potential to keep him a little bit quieter than usual. I think that we've had this a lot this season, though, where we've apparently had some of the best strikers coming to Valley Parade, and we have managed to keep them very, very quiet. I think the only time I can think about is probably Cardiff, and I think that is something that we have got in our repertoire, that we are very, very strong at home, and I don't know. I just feel quite comfortable at home, and I know that are going to be famous last words, but do you think so as well? I mean, like I feel that we can potentially keep him nullified.
I think even the Cardiff home game, obviously their big danger man was Yusuf Salek, and he barely had a kick.
Yeah.
There was never one. Obviously, we've got to caveat that by the fact we lost that game, but we kept. I think sort of Tilt did a job on him, and he kept him very quiet. I think we've played Stockport, and they've got Kyle Wood and Tanto Olafe, and that we kept a clean sheet in that game, defended very well. I think the answer to your question, Ewan, is basically we control the game, and going back to the away game where we started the first half hour, we were absolutely brilliant, went 1-0 up, but we missed so many opportunities and we were made to pay for them at the end. I think essentially it's don't take your foot off the gas, have a bit of composure and assert your authority, and just control it, which fortunately we tend to be doing quite regularly at home.
Yeah, I think the big worry for me is that barring the Stockport game where we basically had 2 massive chances and put one of them away, we haven't been super clinical at home in terms of the chances we're carving out. It's disappointing to see at times. Obviously, Peterborough, we could have had a hatful. But then after that, we haven't had many clear-cut opportunities. We've got to put them to the sword. And I think that's got to be the mentality for the rest of the season. Like you said, with going to Port Vale, we have to go there not thinking about, we haven't won away in, God knows how long. We've got to go there and put a team that are bottom of the table to the sword.
I think, when I think the thing is with Orient, they've got the worst defence in the league. They've conceded more goals than any other team, despite the fact that they've played fewer than almost every other team. They've only played 33 games. So the only other teams that have played fewer games than that are Barnsley and Port Vale. So, we're never going to get a better opportunity to put a defence to the sword than the worst defence in the league, right?
Yeah.
Lads, I'm going to ask you for your predictions. I'm going to ask you for Saturday's game against Leyton Orient. I'm also going to ask you for Port Vale's as well. So, Ewan, give me Saturdays and give me Tuesdays.
Saturday is going to be 2-0 City, and Port Vale away is going to be a scrappy 1-0 to City.
Will
4-0 to City on Saturday. I think we're going to batter them. I think they're rubbish, and I think we're very good at home. 4-0, and then on Wednesday, I think it's going to be a 1-0. I agree with you, and yeah.
I'm going to go with 2-0 on Saturday, and I'm going to go with 3-0 on Tuesday.
Love it. Love that.
Do you know what? I just think that Sunday might be just a bit too much for them. I think that could be a real bonus for us. And when I saw them went to extra time yesterday, I just thought, and then they've got this big game against Sunderland that they're going to be thinking about. And then let's say that in fact, it doesn't matter what the score will be, their emotions will be high in any way. And I just think that they won't be thinking about City, and it'll be just a little bit too late. But hopefully that'll be the case. Lads, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much. And at least you're not in bed like Andy. So this is the 1911, and we'll see you soon.